Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jackie Huddle. If you haven't met me, I'm the art and design librarian in the Herron Art Library, and that's just straight down the hall in this building. Thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to introduce Hannah Moog, and the Herron Art Library, on behalf of all of us, is very excited to have her here today. I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to hear from Hannah. Hannah Moog is an artist and illustrator based in Philadelphia. She graduated with a BFA in General Fine Arts and a minor in book arts from the Maryland Institute College of Art in 2021. Hannah works in a variety of mediums to bring her whimsical characters into the physical world, often utilizing book arts and garments to do so. She makes humorous, intimate, and interactive work with the intention of immersing her audience in her imagined world, full of mysterious but caring characters. Her work is influenced by folk art, quilting traditions, and hugs. She has been a studio intern at the Women's Studio Workshop, an apprentice at Bread and Puppet Press, and at the Fabric Workshop and Museum. In 2023, she participated in residencies at Penland School of Craft, the Wozniak Project, and Arrowmont School of Craft. I want to give Hannah a huge thank you for being here. Just a quick thing to say, we buy artist books in the library, and we came across Night Flyers, which I believe is in Hannah's presentation, and we all fell so in love with Hannah's art. And I cold emailed her, and she was kind enough to jump on Zoom with me. I'm thrilled to have her as a friend of ours, and I just am so grateful she's here. So I'm going to turn things over to Hannah.
Thank you, Jackie. So, hi, y'all. My name is Hannah Moog. I'm an artist based in Philadelphia. That's what I look like on the left. And then on the left is, or on the right, is how I draw myself doing what I do, which is a lot of printing and cleaning. So, a little bit about myself. I'm an artist living and working in Philadelphia. I work around a lot of different mediums. And quilting, my relationships, drawing, hugs, trees are all very important to my work. I make a lot of work that is about my humorous connections in my relationships and in my surrounding nature. So I say I'm an artist. What does an artist do? So I have like 5 jobs as an artist. I make my work, which is one job. I sell my work. I teach. I make work for other people, both as a studio assistant and as an illustrator. And then I have a day job at a museum. So this on the right is me very seriously hot gluing at my day job, being an artist. So the first part of my job, making my work, which is the thing I would like to spend all my time doing, but isn't necessarily. So the things that I make drawings, I make prints. I am a screen printer. I do letterpress printing. I do risograph. I make lots of books in different formats and zines as well. And then sometimes I make funny garments, and I make a lot of things that kind of exist between the lines of all those mediums. Working across different mediums helps me stay fresh, and it always keeps me learning. And it's a way that my work feeds into itself. Nothing's ever stagnant, because like a drawing will exist as a drawing, and then it'll exist as a book, and then I'll make a little soft sculpture, and then that soft sculpture will become a performance, and then I'll make a drawing about the performance, and it all just is constantly feeding into itself. So this is like a little sample of all of the ways that my work exists. So I have this little drawing, which is kind of representative of a lot of things that I do. I'm very interested in these drawings where humans are interconnected and creating different geometric shapes. I make books that are based, this book is based, it's called A Walk with the Morning Moon. And it's based on like these anxiety walks that I would take in my neighborhood and all the different things that I would see. And it was screen printed. And then on the right is my cat in a tiny little hat that I made for him, because I'm often drawing him and he needs a little hat. So um, all of the work that I do starts in my sketchbook. I've had a sketchbooking practice since I was 13. somebody bought me one of those like draw everyday notebooks that you would see at like Barnes and Nobles. And I have not stopped drawing like that since. I think having a personal daily sketchbooking practice is the most important part of my art. It's like the constant of everything. It's where I sit and I reflect about what I'm doing, which is I'm often drawing myself drawing because that's what I'm doing, or I'm drawing myself sewing, which is pretty funny. But I'm the constant in my life, so I'm often drawing myself in different situations, and this is where all of the rest of my work comes from. So my sketchbook is also really important to me because it's like a really wonderful and like easy way of seeing and noticing what I'm being drawn to without like thinking about it too hard. Like I'm often drawing trees. I'm often drawing these crowds of people. On the left is this big tree in the park that's close to my house in Philadelphia. And it's a tree that I draw all the time and then has become other prints. And on the right is a drawing of a Friendsgiving dinner I had with last year. And again, these crowd drawings and tree drawings are like both very important in this practice, and then they bleed into the other work. So again, in my daily life, I'm really drawn to drawing these like scenes of people coming together. So I have lots of sketches from shows that I'm going to where like many people become one scene. And on the right is a scene of people doing a maypole last spring at a local contra dance. Um, I'm very inspired by these crowds and these like human formations of movement that become like one flat pattern. Um, I'm also really drawn to just like scenes of nature and coming back and drawing the same thing over again. This is a swimming hole in upstate New York that I've drawn repeatedly over the last 3 years. It's really wonderful to have this practice that I've maintained for like 13 years now, where I can look back at all my sketchbooks and see the different places that I keep coming back to and how the things that I'm looking at have evolved and how the places and how like constant the things that I'm interested in are. So lots of trees and people coming together and like small moments in nature. This was like me reflecting on a dragonfly landing on me. Yeah. So this practice is both about documenting my life, but it's also like having this practice is like where I draw every day has like developed my hand, it's developed my style. Like the way that I draw is different than it was when I started this 13 years ago, but it has become different because I've had this constant in my life of drawing these patterns and scenes every day for so long. So again, they're just everyday scenes. And then these small like writings and like observations then become like the lines of books and things for the future. Like this on the left is a scene of me looking out my window and seeing the trees losing their leaves and still full now naked like becomes a line in other books and they just bleed into everything else. This is a scene, and I'm also like really interested. I think humor is really important in my work. I'm drawing things that I think are silly, either like that I have to like lean to avoid the shrubs on my way, or like the way that I have to bend over to hug my grandmother, or like my aunt asking me silly questions on FaceTime, or these are toddlers trying to learn how to play soccer in my local park and they don't know what they're doing. So these like scenes are about like trying to capture like the beauty of what I'm looking at, but also like the humor in what's going on around me. And again, I think things that I'm really focusing on in my drawings that you start to see specifically in the sketchbooks are these everyday patterns that emerge. I'm like really obsessed with like the wood grain of trees, the ripples of water, the repeated lines of a bridge, like these patterns of the brick, a repeated like teardrop of rain. On the left is me and my friends waiting to get Ritas in the spring. And on the right is a bridge that I really loved when I was living in upstate New York. And I find like these focusing on patterns in everyday life to be both very meditative, like the process of observing them, but then the process of drawing them is like deeply meditative. These aren't drawings that I'm sketching. I just use a pen and I'm like free drawing. Um, so it's very meditative and that like I kind of zone out to fill these patterns. And is also very reflective. Like I'm just thinking about like the things that I'm observing and the things that like are standing out to me and like what I find beautiful in these scenes. Um, and then these patterns that I'm doing in my sketchbook then bleed out and become larger drawings. So this is a larger drawing. It's like a 24 by 36 drawing called Crowd that I made in 2022. So this is like the full drawing, and then this is like a detail. So it's unclear to me how much detail you can get from this on the big screen. But so in my everyday sketchbook, I'm documenting my everyday life and the small moments of beauty and things. But then these characters that I'm pulling out from the sketchbook then become these larger drawings and are expanded here. And again, they're intuitive drawings, so I'm not planning like anything with pencils. I'm like planning a shape. Like I know that I want the full page of this to be taken up by characters, but I'm not like doing any planning with pencil. So again, they're like very meditative because I just kind of like zone out and go into like the drawing of all these interconnected shapes, which these drawings, much like my books later on, because there's no sketching and not very much planning, I have to like, it really feels like a puzzle. Like I have to figure out what goes here and what goes there and how everything interconnects without like doing a lot of planning. So again, they're like a puzzle, they're meditative. I'm really interested in how these are all individual figures and individual characters, but they come together to be one unit. And the way that they're interlocking and connecting with each other is very interesting to me. Like they're all having serious conversations where they're talking to each other, which are just kind of like, I think like serious versus silly is something that like I am very interested in, and I really like both like working in like a serious but silly way, but also my content is kind of like they're serious characters. They feel very seriously, but they're like silly little guys. So I'm very interested in like these interconnected figures that are both they themselves are patterns and shapes that interlock, but then also their outfits are patterns and shapes, and they're all like calling to each other, reaching for each other, interacting. And I do lots of these like crowd drawings. This is like from a series that I've done for like 8 or 9 years now. Um, in addition to those types of characters that don't really have like much of a story in and of themselves, I also make drawings with characters that have more of a narrative. So these are the Long Coat Ladies, which are a group of characters that I've been working with again for a similar amount of time, like 7 or 8 years. They're this amorphous group of people who they have these big coats and amorphous bodies, and they're always on the move and they're always together, and we don't really know where they're going, but they have each other. And this series of work, these characters have lived through drawings, they live through, they're going to appear in books later in the show. I've done like cranky performances with them, I've made puppets of them, but they've taken a lot of forms. I really think about them as like an imagined like matriarchy. I have like I'm from like I have a multicultural background. I'm mixed race. My mother's side is Dominican and my father's side is Armenian, so I don't really have like one unified family history. And I kind of think of these characters as like an imagined family history and imagined folktale that I make for myself about like the women that I come from, who have all had to come from different places so that I can end up here. Um, and that's like a theme that appears in a lot of my other work. I do really think about a lot of things as like an imagined folk tale that's like kind of based on my personal history and my life, but it's also has like fantastical elements that aren't necessarily more about like the feeling of something rather than like a real event. So those are the long coat ladies. So from drawings, I then also make prints. So these are some large yardage screen prints that I made when I was at the Women's Studio Workshop in 2022. The above piece is called In Dreams, and the lower piece is Mega March of the Long Coat Ladies. So the lower piece is a repeat pattern that I made from this drawing that I digitally edited. And I really like working with printmaking because I'm obviously really into like repetition and pattern and like an accumulation of image, and screen printing and especially yardage printing allows me to continue to expand this world that I'm already making to make it like as large as it feels like in my head. And like the obsession of drawing something over and over again, I think screen printing is like a wonderful way for that to manifest. um, and then also, what I really enjoy about screen printing and screen printing in this way, yardage printing, is that the prints are so big that I am unable to print them on my own. You need another person to print with you. And I really enjoy that this process, like the images of my drawings, the people are all interconnected and reliant on each other. This process makes me dependent on someone else in the flow and rhythm of working with another person to make the artwork. And I really like when both like the images that I'm thinking about relate to like the physicality of the way that I have to print something. So I do really love that about yardage printing. And then this is a detail of in dreams. So this this piece and many of my works came straight from sketchbook pages that I was drawing. I had There were several years where I was having these really scary dreams where I was flying, and it was like I was doing the breaststroke in the sky, and the dreams themselves were terrifying. But then when I would draw them and write about them in my sketchbook, they looked so lovely, like to be like, oh, it's a person swimming in the sky. That's like actually like a really beautiful image, even though they were like a terrifying experience. So I started making these prints as like a way to like deal with those dreams. And I don't have those dreams anymore. So I do think it worked. So that's where these images come from. And then similarly, in dreams leads to my book Night Flyers, which was you guys have in your collection now. So this is an accordion book with a Vauvel front cover. So when you spin it, four characters fly through the night sky: the moon, no name angel, star chaser and his star, and the wanderer and her steed. So again, these characters came from like that same body of work where I was thinking about these like horrifying, scary dreams where I was flying, but they're also kind of beautiful. And there is like an otherworldliness to them. So this is the interior of the book. So the characters fly through the night sky in the front cover, and then there's a short story for each of them on the inside. And this book was also like during the pandemic where I was definitely having some like a lot of my books are about yearning, but like I feel like this series was definitely like, oh, I'm reaching for the moon. I can't touch a star. I can't touch an angel. I'm looking for somewhere to go. So I think it's funny to like look back at these now and like I still really love them, but they're definitely from that time. So additionally, so I'm going to get into more books. So I make a lot of books that are like more complex in scale. Like I like to think of a book as both an object to hold a story, but also like a sculptural object that can stand on its own. So I really like working with like the previous book, Night Flyers. Like it as a Vauvel can stand as a little sculpture on its own. This book, Where Water Meets, um, is a do-si-do. So it changes directions in the middle of the book and it can be displayed as this little accordion, which I like that it is both a book and a sculptural object. And again, this book came from, I was swimming in a river and I got swept in a current. And I was like, I really wanted to make a book. And then I made a beautiful drawing about it. So I was coping. And I wanted to make a book that was kind of about that experience and different experiences with water. So again, equally about story, but also movement, transformation, books as like a sculptural object as well as a device for storytelling. This is the first book that I ever did as an addition project. So I made this as a sophomore at Micah. It's called Welcome to the Woods. It's a 3-layer carousel book. And at this time, I was really working in this scale that was very handheld. I think the reason why I'm drawn to making books, especially from someone who like comes from like art from sketchbooking, is that I really loved the time it would take to make my like large drawings and how they were like finished works and that a drawing or a print can be like observed by many. But I have a really hard time with like objects that you put on a wall and you can't touch. Like there seems like a real like emotional disconnect, especially when I spend so much time sketchbooking. In sketchbooking, I'm like holding my book, it's up close and personal. I have like a physical relationship with the object. And I think that's a real reason why I'm very interested in books and zines because they're objects that are meant to be held. It's meant to, you get to hold like the world of a story in your hands. And it creates like a really intimate experience with the viewer. And also just like, for me as an artist, it also is like somebody holding my world. Like it's, I find it a much more satisfying relationship than like a print on a wall. So welcome to the woods. This book is called The People in the Paper Woods, and the Longcoat Ladies appear again. This was a series of short stories, again, when I was a senior in college, and it was like deep pandemic times, and I didn't have access to like any print facilities, but I could send some stuff to our school's Rezo. So I was making these little stories as like a collection of like tiny folk tales um, to go together. So this is a compilation. And then this book is called Looking in the Night. This is like where I'm trying to bridge the gap between like my simple pamphlet books, like the previous book you just saw, and my more complex structures. So this is a book that is like a pamphlet, but it has a die cut cover and it has this fold out. And I made this in collaboration. It was published with the small press Childish Books. So this is like the only project that you'll see where I like did all the illustrations, but I didn't do any of the printing or assembling, which was like hard for me. I'm definitely someone who like it's important for me to like walk through every step of the process, like the drawing, the planning, the printing, the cutting, like it's all important to me. But this was a really wonderful project to work on with Childish Books because I could like work with another person and be like, oh, we can make something big together, and I don't have to have my hand in every little thing. So this is Looking in the Night. And then I like to explore and build on different structures that I've already played with. And I think working in iterations is like a really wonderful way to like build a practice and like help an idea like come to fruition. So this was like the similar pedal structure that I was playing with in the previous book, but this was an accordion book called Small Loves that is a risograph accordion. And something additionally that I love about books and working in this medium is how expansive books are, and that books have the ability to be both like tiny, 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 and then like change and grow and expand. And I think that like that ability to transform, like makes something feel alive. It makes a story feel animated, and it also just like helps. I feel like it helps the viewer have like a relationship to like the feeling of like a poem or the feeling of a story. And in this, I was playing with this is letterpress, a letterpress cover with a risograph interior. So again, playing with combining different print mediums in different scale, but trying to like have this experience of like intimacy with your viewer that comes through like the scale of the work that you're making. So this is a book that I made earlier this year where again I'm working with letterpress and Riso together. So this is a book called Leaning Trees. I just was noticing that everything I was drawing, everything I was taking pictures of were like these trees with like these really intense leans, and like how trees like become almost figures and have these personalities. And so the blind printed covers were really important to me because I wanted like I like being able risograph and screen printing, and some of the mediums that I work on are so flat, and I really like the ability to like feel like not only are you holding the book, but you can like feel the story. So these blind printed covers are like a way to like feel the trees of this book. And then continuing with letterpress, this is the book First Light Flickers, which is a tunnel book with a vowel. So as you spin the outer ring, three shooting stars fly through the night sky, and the text First Light Flickers appears. Um, I'm really into making these books that they don't really have a start, they don't really have a finish. Their moving components are like never ending and cyclical, which also relates to like the processes that I'm working them through. So when I'm making a book, all of the books that are in the presentation, they're not one-offs, they're like additions of like some of them I've only made 12, some of them I made like 150. This book specifically, I think, is like an edition of 24. So when I'm working on a book like this, it's like I have to break down every single component, and then I have to work every component through the same steps to put them all together, which, like the drawing, the nature of the drawing process is very meditative. And again, like I go into like a trance state where like I'm making all of these things. It's like you're making like a little army. And again, I really like the process of additioning and making like 25 of something in the same way that I like making yardage screen prints. It's like a way to make a feeling, like visualize a feeling as like as expansive as it is in your mind. Like these thoughts that I'm having like repeatedly about this experience of seeing a shooting star, like I'm thinking about it all the time, but like one drawing doesn't necessarily like convey that like cyclical feeling. But like if I make it 24 times and then I make a Vauvel that spins, it's like that, trying to harness that feeling. And then at the same time, the book that I just showed was letterpress printed. And the process of printing letterpress is cyclical in nature of its own. You have to run the press through this like turning handle. And I'm really interested again in how like the way that I draw, the motion and cyclical nature of the way that I draw relates to the cyclical nature that I'm printing, relates to the cyclical nature that I'm editioning, relates to the cyclical nature of the finished product, where it's like spinning, 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 all of these like moments of movement. And how like I'm really obsessed with making books that have moving elements, and then to produce them I have to do these like very specific movements, and in a way it feels like a dance to me. And that's something that I'm very interested in my work. And I also like, the more that I write about it, I'm like, I kind of think this is like stimming and self-soothing, which is like an interesting part of an artistic practice. So on the topic of like movement in print and these things being like a dance, I for a while had been really wanting to make a book that felt like dancing. Dance is something that has been like important in my life in a variety of ways, and like not like super seriously, but like a part of like my family culture, like and just dance has always been something that's important to me. And when I moved to Philadelphia, I started going to contra dances. So this is a book that I made earlier this year that it's kind of a pop-up. When you open it, this accordion of dancers pops open, and then the dancers can be arranged in different formations to resemble different contra dancing moves. And then there's a fold out that has different moves. So this is something that I'm still experimenting with, and I think I want to continue to make books in this way, in this vein of like thinking about how a book can feel like a dance, and how the motion of a book and how you open it can relate to these certain feelings of motion. Is something that I'm interested in continuing to explore. So in addition, when I make these books, on the right is a Vauvel that's called A Small But Growing Light, and it features this wanderer character that's been in several of the books previously seen. When I make these Vauvels in these books, I really think that it's a way for me to like animate these characters and bring them into the physical world. Another way that I sometimes do that to bring a character into the physical world is to make costumes and props. So on the left is the Wanderer costume and this paper mache tree that I made. These garment works are from my thesis that was again deep in the pandemic, so I couldn't like do a lot of printing, but I could sew, I could do paper mache, and again, and it was a way to like I was really craving like things that were really physical that I could like touch and be with during that time. So garments as a way to further bring my characters into the physical world. So here's another example of a garment I made. So this is a costume for one of my long coat lady figures, and then it turns into a tent. So, and it's called A Home for Wherever You Go. So the long coat ladies, they're always on the move. So you got to be able to bring your home with you. And then on the right is the page from the earlier zine I showed, The People in the Paper Woods, that shows how one can transform their cape into a tent. In addition to like bringing these characters into the physical world, I was trying to like translate the patterns that I draw. So this blouse, I hand painted these tree patterns that I'm drawing all the time in my books. They're very dancerly. And I was also really interested in how, like, I make all these books. I was really interested in how, like, the body could be used as a book or as a stage, and like how you can both tell the story through being a character, but you can tell the story, tell a story through being a narrator, like a narrator and a storyteller, and how a jacket with these symbols that I use in a lot of my books could be used as like a stage to be like you could point to different characters and like telling us like doing story time. So that was something I was really interested in at the time. This is a hat for carrying a small friend. So I made these figures that fit in this nook. And then I continued this work when I was a resident at the Wasaic Project in March 2023. I had, between those year or two, I had gotten really into yardage printing. So instead of hand painting these wood patterns, these are fabrics that I printed and then turned into garments, and was another way to physically bring my characters into the world. So, and then this was later, so I was able to like regroup with some of my friends, and we were able to film this at my grandmother's house, which was being sold. So it was like, again, these characters are kind of based on like an imagined family history, and then I'm bringing them to life on my friends who I care about deeply, and then we're doing a procession of them at this place that's been very important to me and my family, that like soon will no longer be in our lives. So this was like important work for me to do back in 2023, and I still have all this footage that I haven't necessarily done a lot with, but I also find that like I come back to projects and it's like good to have things that like are kind of on the back burner that might come forward again. Something else about this, like talking, like bringing back serious silly. This is silly. Like these guys are pretty silly. And while like I'm very serious in how I like in my craft and how I construct these things, I think the like silliness of these characters and like whimsy is very important to me. So that was something that I was thinking about. But they're also kind of looming and a little bit scary and mysterious. They're kind of like you don't know what's going on with them. But that's like an important balance in my work that I find. So those are the long coat ladies. Okay, so once I make my work, then I sell my work. So a big part of what I do is doing, like a lot of artists, like you do galleries and you do shows, and I do that sometimes, but I find that the best way to connect with people for me and the way that I work is to do markets. So I've done like a lot of tabling in markets since I was a teenager, and I continue to do them now. This was at the Pittsburgh Art Book Fair a couple years ago. And I think it's like really important to find spaces and a variety of different types of markets to like meet different clientele. So like the Pittsburgh Art Book Fair is really wonderful because I can engage with like other book artists. And then I do lots of like local markets in Philadelphia or wherever I'm living that are more like regular folk who just like want to buy like a $10 zine or a $20 zine and not one of my like artist books. So I have a lot of the projects that I find really exciting are like these books that move and stuff, and those aren't necessarily like at an accessible price point for everybody. So I also make my smaller works that are less involved, that I can produce at a more manageable like price point. And then I also work with companies like the Minnesota Center for Book Arts and Vamp and Tramp that they've now closed. But those are wonderful organizations for selling artist books and then also like connecting librarians with artists. Yes, so now I also have to just cold email librarians to sell my work, but that's okay. So these are more examples for markets. This is I did a pop-up at the Fabric Workshop and Museum last winter. This is at Philadelphia Zine Festival. This is at a Fleischer Winter Market, which is a nonprofit here in Philadelphia. But again, I think markets are a really wonderful way to engage with people, and also make money. Like my art funds itself, because I do things like this. And it's also a really wonderful way to be able to see how people are engaging with your work. I find that when my work is like in a gallery or in a show that's very formal, I don't really get to have the experience of seeing like people explore my work. Like I have a lot of these, like I make maze books and the things that spin and stuff, and it's like really satisfying for me to be able to watch people figure out how those work. So I find that doing markets is like a really wonderful way to both like sell your work and make money as an artist, but also to like build your audience and connect with people. And then also have an understanding of like what people are finding interesting and engaging about your work. Like you get like firsthand feedback. Not that I'm asking people like what they think and stuff, but you can watch people and see like what people are being drawn to and what people don't understand, like how something works. And I feel like it's been a really good way for me to figure out like, oh, this is success. This is what's successful in my books. This is what not successful in my books. This is what scares people to touch. So markets are really wonderful. Another thing that I do is teaching. So, right after I graduated college, I did a lot of assisting of printmaking classes when I was an intern at the Women's Studio Workshop. And I also have done some assisting at Penland School of Craft and at other places here in Philadelphia. And then through assisting other people, I have learned how to teach through observation and taught my own classes. So on the upper left is me teaching at the Women's Studio Workshop, my class books that move Vovels, die cuts, and foldouts. And I've also taught at different studios here in Philadelphia, like Second State Press and the Arts League. So again, teaching is a really wonderful way to you both learn as a student in a class, but also as a teacher. Like you learn, I feel like teaching really helps me understand like what I like about what I do and like having to explain and like break down the components like really helps me be like, oh, this is what I'm focusing on. This is not what I'm focusing on. And it's also a really wonderful way to meet and connect with different artists. So this is Ingrid Ackerson, who was the teacher I was assisting at Penland, and she's a really wonderful letterpress printer and quilt artist based in Detroit. And this is Emmy Bright, who's another wonderful Detroit-based artist. I think they're friends. This is random that they're in the slide together, but Emmy Bright is a wonderful screen printer who her class was about like text and image, and it just made me think deeply about like how text and image are interacting in my work. So I think assisting and teaching are wonderful ways to have another stream of income as an artist. And also most artists that I know teach in some capacity. Another part of what I do is illustration. So I've gotten most of my illustration work through companies like either seeing my art at a show or from my Instagram and then reaching out. So this is a spot for Viz Arts Richmond for some illustrations I did for them. So again, in my illustration work that I do for other people, it's very similar to my personal practice. I'm still interested in crowds. I'm still interested in pattern. I'm still interested in these interlocking characters, but they are like a little more simplistic and stylized simply because, you know, you have a time crunch and you want to get things done quickly and also be easy to print and be legible to an audience. So this is for this wine bar in Baltimore. And then this is a project I did for Women's Studio Workshop at their Upstate Art Book Fair. And a lot of these, like I'm not doing the graphic design, I'm like doing all of the spot illustrations and stuff like that. And that's also been interesting to be able to, again, like work with other people and like release like total control, which is like good to remember as an artist. Also, when I'm working as an illustrator, most of what I'm doing is making iterations and like tiny different, like seemingly inconsequential like differences, but having these like spots and things that are just like they're similar but they're a little different allows your clients to like have a very like versatile package that they can use for advertising. And then this is a catalog, the cover that I designed and some spot illustrations for Viz Arts Richmond. Again, like still doing crowds, still very interested in patterns, but the figures are a little more simplistic so that it can be a little more universal for what they're advertising. And then this is some work that I did for the Fabric Workshop this spring for Mother's Day, where I sent all these individual figures and then they were put together to use for different marketing. So doing work like this is really fun. It allows me to be creative, but also like I'm not normally just drawing parents for myself. So it's like it doing client work is a great way to like get outside of your comfort zone and like just it like sparks new ideas that I wouldn't have had without doing the client work. And then I also have started doing some other, like, this is album art that I did for a Philadelphia band this spring, which this is just based off of I saw them play and posted it and they enjoyed it. And so I ended up getting paid to make their cover art, which is really awesome. So, yeah, client work can come in all shapes and sizes. And sadly, Instagram is how I've made gotten most of my gigs. So, like, having a professional Instagram and a clear website where people can contact you is really important. And then I was asked to talk about like my journey and like my journey as like an early career artist. So these are some of the things that I have done to be a working artist. So I'm not a full-time artist. I have a day job that I balance, and I've had times where I've worked less and I've worked more, and I've had jobs that are like more fulfilling and less fulfilling. And like I've worked as a gallery worker in a museum. I've been an artist assistant. I've been a studio assistant. I've been an assistant seamstress. And sometimes the jobs that are more creative or like more exciting in the day to day of working in the job, but then like I'll have less creative energy for my own practice. Whereas the jobs that are a little more boring while you're doing them, like I still have the energy to do my own work. So I think that's something that I didn't necessarily think about when I was in school, but that balance is always something that you're working through as an artist. And then again, talking about my journey, some programs I've done as an early career artist. So when I graduated from MICA, I lived in Baltimore for like 6 more months. I worked at a local museum and I was assistant seamstress. I then was an intern at the Women's Studio Workshop, and that was a 9 month program. On the right, you can see me working with Colette Fu, editioning her artist book there. And that program was really important to me because it was my first time working in a studio outside of an academic institution. It taught me what it was like to work at a nonprofit and what it was like to work as a studio, as a team, and how to edition prints and work with a client for printing in a way that you have a different relationship to printing than when you're printing for someone else than when you're printing for yourself. So that was really important to me and helped me understand like what work I'm interested in, and like also really helped me being exposed to the Women's Studio Workshop. They're the largest producers of artist books. And so it was really wonderful to be in their studios and like understand how they work through a production of books and how they work with their artists and how they work, like what that relationship is like. And I also think it's important to realize that most like famous artists that you're seeing, they're not alone doing their work. They have a team of people working with them, whether it's artist assistants, whether it's interns, whether it's like master printers and painters. I think it's really interesting and important to recognize that most art is not made alone. Like when you're thinking of like large scale famous artists. So after that experience, I was trying to figure out where I wanted to be like an artist and where I wanted to lay down roots. And I didn't have anywhere that I was paying rent. So I had this year of bit bopping where I was a resident at Penland School of Craft. I was a resident at the Wasaic Project. I was a resident at Herron School of Craft. And then I was teaching. I did some teaching at Penn. Did my assisting at Penland. I did my teaching at Women's Studio. I was an apprentice at Bread and Puppet. And then in the fall, I was an apprentice at the Fabric Workshop and Museum. And all of these things I was doing, I was trying to figure out. I was trying to like use these programs as a way to travel and figure out where I wanted to be in the world and like meet artists and ask them, where do you live? How do you work? How do you support yourself? And like using that time to figure out like how I could see myself existing as an artist. And then 2024, I stayed in Philadelphia, and this year I got back to doing some small residences. So I went back to Penland in the winter, and I did a small residency this summer at the Department of Things. So these are some pictures from that time in 2023 when I was trying to figure out where to be. So on the left is me in the studios at Penland. The middle is my studio at the Wasaic Project when I was working on all those garments. And then at the right was me at Aramont. And all of these programs were really wonderful ways to like experience different studios and experience different people and see how like the space that you're in totally affects like the art that you're making. Like I couldn't print at some of these places, so I made drawings and like being able to be flexible and understand like what is and what wasn't important for me to have access to. So after I did all that bit bopping, I was an apprentice at the Fabric Workshop and Museum. I really wanted to hone my skills in yardage printmaking and get more technical. And from that program, I made this yardage, another long coat ladies print, and I really developed my community in Philadelphia. So this is Olivia Fredericks, who's a really wonderful artist and printmaker in Philadelphia, and we became friends through doing this program. And Veronica Hassan is a wonderful educator here in Philadelphia, and Josh and Alina are other wonderful printmakers who I met doing Philadelphia. So yeah, so during this time, I was like further honing these skills and starting to build my community in Philly. And then again, just to talk about how I found opportunities, I mostly have found the things that I have done through researching the people whose art I admire, who I think I have similarities to. And then you can find most people's like CVs on their websites or just like stalking their Instagram. And then I would go to those websites for those institutions and then just see what programs they had for entry level artists. Um, and then a lot of it was also networking, which is just talking to people in a kind and professional way. I have found and gotten a lot of opportunities through just like what I sometimes think is being annoying, but it's just you have to talk to people about the things that you're interested in, the things you're interested in learning or needing a job. Like that's how I've gotten a lot of things. And networking is a gross word, but I try to think about it as like professional friend building. And then also, I think the reason that I have gotten a lot of opportunities is because I have a wonderful network of like professional friends, both from like school and from these opportunities that I've done where people want to work with nice people and the art world is small. And I think it's really important to be just like engage with the people around you and be like really generous. Like if somebody wants to talk about their work, I'm always down. And it's really helpful to have those people that you can call on to have critiques or to look over an application and then to do the same for them is how you build a professional network and is how I have like had a lot of success and found community doing what I do. So also, I think something about being an artist is you also have to, or I have had to be open to your situation changing and being able to move and change your artwork with that. So I have had some serious knee injuries. I had a surprise serious knee injury this January, and it completely changed the type of work I've been able to make this year. But also, like being able to work across different mediums and opening your mind to like the way different things can exist, I think is really important. And like being able to have a practice that you can turn to no matter your health or your like what's going on in your life, I think is like really important. And then this is one of my last images, but this is what I'm currently working on and what I think most of my life as an artist looks like. I'm working on a new carousel book and there are just piles everywhere. It's piles and piles and piles. So this is kind of my process. It's like organized chaos. Like everything has to be orderly, but you're amassing so many prints that it's going to be kind of chaotic. So those are my images. Thank you for listening. I'll turn it over to Jackie now.
Hannah, thank you so much. I'm gonna be bothering you for when that next carousel book is for sale. But
Yeah.
that was awesome. So thank you all for being here. We do have, I believe, Vance, correct me if I'm wrong, till 1. Okay, thank you. To ask Hannah some questions, I did realize that I'm a bad host and I forgot that I have some announcements. So, for one, Lauren's going to hate me, but I'm going to point out Lauren. If you saw the poster for this event, Lauren Taylor designed it. She's incredible. She works for the library. She's probably going to yell at me later. Um, but we're so grateful to her. And of course, it has Hannah's incredible art on it. So check that out if you haven't. Sorry, Lauren. And we have cookies and coffee in the library because we have a few of Hannah's works in the front exhibit cases. So if you want to check out White Flyers, A Walk in the Woods, we got the long coat ladies. So also, we're able to open the exhibit if you're interested in actually holding the art and interacting with it. I'm very adamant about that. So please just come up to the desk and ask us. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this thing around. And if you have a question for Hannah, I think you're just going to hit talking to here. Yeah, talking to here. Okay? Just hold it. You don't have to do what I did. Okay, so
Good much. Oh.
Hi, I had a question about your reason process. So in little, can you hear me?
It's kind of cutting in and out.
in and out. Okay, I can repeat the question too.
Okay, great.
And then I've used one of these before. You gotta hold it really close. Okay. Yeah. I have about your graph process. So for your what's your process like getting that little print so small and nearly on the roof?
Did you hear that, Hannah?
No.
Okay. So the question was about your risograph process for the little books. Now I feel like I'm too loud. The student wants to know if how you get it so small. Is that correct, Vance?
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So everything that I draw, especially with the Riso, because the machines I have access to are often kind of some of the older models where they only have scanner bed. So basically everything that I'm drawing is to scale. And I just I have like the original drawings that are like the same size as the prints. I just draw small. And I've kind of always drawn small, and I have tiny Micron 005 pens that allow me to draw pretty small. But yeah, they're just to scale, and then I'm scanning them into the Riso to print.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah.
As an artist who does markets, what would you say is the best way to find places to sell your work and find people to collaborate with?
Did you hear that, Hannah?
I think I missed the end of it. To find people to collaborate with. Is that the end of the question?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I feel like the way that I tend to find markets is I try to just like I try to follow all of the like art institutions in the city that I live in. And I try to follow like artists who are working in similar ways to me. So I follow like a lot of printmakers, and I follow a lot of like other illustrator type people. And then sadly, what has happened is like sometimes it takes like a year of seeing what people are doing, and then I'll be like, okay, these people are doing this market, this market, this market, so I know to apply for that for next year. So sometimes that's kind of frustrating. And then honestly, I have found like people to collaborate with mostly through like making friends and being active on social media, but like going to events that are specifically like for people who work in the mediums that I go to. So I try to go to like every print thing that's going on in Philadelphia, every book thing, every zine thing. And that's like not always achievable, but really like going to events like that where you think you're going to meet like-minded people, and then just like having to try to like be strong and be friendly, which is like hard. But that is how I've like met people. And I also do think like I'm someone who used to previously think I was really shy, and I like I was always really frustrated because I felt like other people that I was working with were like getting more opportunities or like really connecting with people. And I realized that like they just were connecting with people because they were brave enough to like introduce themselves first and like engage in a conversation with somebody. And so mostly that's like how I've met people to connect with. And then it's like usually like the people that you think are like cool and kind are like the people that you're going to want to work with. So.
I have a question. Sorry, that was on. So your work is very playful, and it's really fun to look at, and it looks from the outside like you really avoid being too precious about it, and then you sort of just, you have your sort of meditative state that you go into in your work. And would you have any advice for students who do find themselves being sort of precious about their work and maybe not drawing enough or not feeling like they're playful enough in their sketchbooks? So something you would advise students to do to sort of get out of that.
Yeah, I think it's
Sure.
really, yeah, I heard that. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's really, that's like really hard. I definitely have gone through periods where I'm like scared to draw and like scared, like, yeah, because I'm being too precious or overworking and stuff. And I really think it's the type of thing where if I think one, trying a new medium, having sketchbooks that aren't too expensive. Like I'm really into, I have these Fabriano sketchbooks that like, they're really big and they have really nice paper, but they're $5. So I like don't feel bad if I'm like drawing one thing in one page and like just moving on. But I think sometimes if I'm getting caught in that like preciousness or being too scared or caught up in like the freeze of like drawing, sometimes I try to change the medium that I'm working with, or I try to just like just not let myself think when I'm drawing. Had I've had teachers do this exercise that's kind of it's in the past been used as a drawing exercise, but this is something that Linda Berry does, and she's like a really wonderful comics artist and teacher if you don't know her. And she has some really wonderful books about drawing that I recommend anybody look up. But she has some activities where you do a spiral for the length of a song. And then after that, you have to stream of conscious write, you have to stream of conscious draw. And I think exercises like that, where you're trying to like shut off your brain and just get into what am I seeing? What am I smelling? What am I thinking? Like, where am I right now? And then just put pen to paper. I think exercises like that are like a really wonderful way to like get out of that preciousness. And then it also is, yeah, a way to not get like too stylized or like overworked because you're just like trying to take in exactly like what's going on around you. But I also do truly believe that just like getting your hand to move every day, even if like I think a lot of what I draw is bad. And then it becomes better because like you're just doing it all the time, or like you find the charm in like a mistake. And I think like trying to like get into that mindset where it's like it's fine if a drawing is bad, it just needs to be a drawing, and I just need to do it, is really good. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Yes.
Like, are you selling any of that work or making money from fiber arts?
Are you selling any of your fiber arts?
So the fiber arts, like sometimes sell them. It's the type of thing where it's like I'm hand printing, hand sewing. If I charged what I needed for to make that labor, like to like pay myself, like even just $20 an hour for that work, it just would be so expensive. So I don't really typically sell my garments. I do sometimes print and sew and sell tote bags, and I make like printed t-shirts and things, but I haven't sold any of my like capital G garments just because they're just like such a labor of love and I have like such an attachment to them, that it's like hard for me to, and they just would be so expensive. So I haven't yet done that. That's something that I've maybe thought of doing, but is not like the most exciting thing to me.
Awesome. Well, let's give Hannah another round of applause. Hannah, thank you so much. That was so cool. I will send you an email this afternoon about some things, not to be weird. So I'll be in touch very soon. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.